is very busy. Nice to see some familiar faces and familiar names. Now we'll just give it a moment and then we shall make a start. Okay. Like we've got many more people coming through, so I think let's make a start there, shall we? Hello, everyone. Really lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Megan. I'm in the marketing and communications team at the Audience Agency. For audio description purposes, I'm a white woman. I have longish dark brown hair, and I'm wearing a sort of dark pink sweater. I was actually looking for a red sweater today to sort of be a bit festive, but the choices were either a pink sweater or a green sweater that is so heavily sequined. I thought it would dazzle everyone, so I decided not to go for the full-on sequins today. That can be later. But it's really lovely to see you. We are here to talk about audience answers, and we're here to talk about audience answers in the very practical context of using it to hopefully boost your marketing and sales campaigns for shows in January. We haven't done this session before. This is brand new to us. So bear with us. I have no idea about my timings today. We'll see how it works out, but hopefully we'll be able to keep to a nice tight hour and allow for a little bit of question and answer time at the end as well, all being well. With me here today is my colleagues in the plural, Samira and Lucy. I won't put them on the spot and ask them to introduce themselves, but they are both here to answer any questions as we go and to potentially keep me to time and help me out if I get stuck on a question. But please do, as we go, pop the any questions that you have in the chat, because both of them are very, very, very good at answering pretty much anything you care to throw at them. We are recording this session. We will do our best to send you the recording as soon as we can after the event. There is captioning available as well. We use Zoom's automated captioning services. I'll try to speak slowly enough so that it picks me up well. You can switch that on using the captioning button at the bottom of your screen. So, without further ado. So, today, what we're going to cover briefly is we will do a little bit of an introduction to who we are, the Audience Agency, and what we do. We will cover a little bit of ground about what Audience Answers actually is, and alongside that also Audience Spectrum. We did ask you guys when you were booking on the booking form to let us know about your level of familiarity with both Audience Answers and Audience Spectrum. And it was a really mixed bag. We've got some people here who are completely new, and that's absolutely fine. And we've got other people who have been using, some of our tools for a very long time now. So I hope that if you're completely new, you'll feel like this is accessible and there'll be, you won't feel too overwhelmed, and we'll give you that kind of introduction that you're looking for. And likewise, if you have been using the tools for a very long time, we hopefully there'll be something here that you can take away and something that's new to you as well. Getting to the nitty-gritty of things, we're going to be talking about audience answers to support your marketing campaigns this winter. And this idea for a session kind of came about from some conversations we were having here about the sort of challenges that we've had as staff at the Audience Agency who've all worked in cultural organisations before, in theatres, in performing arts venues, etc., and the sorts of problems that we ran up against. And this was a personal bugbear of mine, I have to say. It was you had all of that kind of energy and resource got ploughed into Christmas, and you had huge sales targets for Christmas, and then suddenly January came and slammed you in the face, as it were, and went, here I am, still got shows on, still got targets we've got to make. And it was often a struggle, I have to say. Certainly in my previous life, it wasn't something I found easy. So hopefully we'll do our best to try and suggest some, if not solutions, but maybe helpful hints and helpful suggestions that might help you get just a little bit of a head start before we all get into the chaos of January. So any questions that you've got, as I say, please pop them in the chat. If you've got any questions as well about any of these tools that we might mention about sort of getting set up with them practically, pop them in there as well. It might be that Samira or Lucy can answer them directly in the chat, or it might be that we sort of pause as we go and we address those because they're actually something that's relevant to the whole group. Hopefully that will cover all questions as we go. If not, we will email you after the session and feel free to come back to us on that email and we can start a conversation there as well and answer your questions there. So very briefly, who is the Audience Agency? Who are we? Some of you may know us very well, others might be new. So again, in the spirit of the session, we're going to do a very quick overview, just as a reminder. We are all about sharing insight to help the cultural sector adapt for and with their communities. Little picture there of an assortment of us in various sized bubbles. We're a non-profit, we're independent. One of the big things that we do is that we look after an enormous anonymised set of data about what's going on and what has been going on in the cultural sector, mainly in the form of lots and lots of anonymised data from ticket transactions. So if your ticketing system is connected to Audience Answers, your data, anonymised, is being used to form part of that giant data set that we've got about what's going on in the sector. And it's a really, really precious resource to us because it allows us to do lots and lots of research, but also it allows us to create tools that are based on really robust evidence about what's going on in the kind of big wide world as well. We'll come back a little bit more to that as well as we go through. We work obviously with arts, culture and heritage organisations, but we also work a lot with local authorities, often regional authorities as well, and also funders such as Creative Scotland, Arts Council England, Arts Council of Wales, and other agencies as well. We do a lot of partnership work with other agencies. And our work basically comes in two stripes. There's the sort of off-the-shelf data tools, which we're going to kind of talk mostly about today. But we also have this huge second side of the business, which is all about bespoke consultancy. So if at any point as you're going through, as we talk through today's session, you think, gosh, this is all great, but it doesn't quite fit my organisation and what my organisation needs, come and have a chat with us anyway, because we've got this fabulous team of really experienced consultants who can help work with you on a more kind of bespoke basis as well. So to get into a little bit of terminology, very aware that we are the Audience Agency and we run services called Audience Answers and Audience Spectrum. I mean, as a marketer, I hang my head a little bit because that's a lot of audience and it's a lot of very similar terminology that's quite confusing potentially. So just again, very briefly for those who might be new or just need a little refresher, Audience Answers is a set of tools fundamentally. It's a set of tools that we hope are relevant to all cultural organisations in some form or another. Some of them are free, some of them are costed. So we hope there's an entry point for everyone, regardless of your budget or your size. And they're designed to do the three things on the slide here. They're designed to help you understand your audiences, identify potential new audiences, and most importantly, learn how to reach them. So it's that kind of, triple priority of who are you currently engaging, who could you be engaging in some way or another, and how could you best reach them. So it's a package of tools to help you do that. And they come as either free subscription or one-off services. That idea again that we can make something work for you regardless of how much budget you've got for the year, or perhaps you just want a quick and low-cost solution, or perhaps you're looking for something more in-depth. Running through all of those tools, in fact, running through everything the Audience Agency does is this segmentation tool that we call Audience Spectrum. Again, maybe familiar to some, maybe not. We're not going to go into a huge amount of detail here because we can send you links to find out more about Audience Spectrum and to see more detail about the actual segments themselves. And there's no point dwelling on it because we could do an entire session on Audience Spectrum, and that's not what you're here for. But we will be referencing it a lot as we go through today because it is that thread that runs through everything. It's a segmentation of the entire UK population. There are 10 segments, and below each of those segments, they're subdivided into two. So you've then got 20 subsegments as well. And it's based on those huge data sets that I mentioned earlier that we have collected over the years about what people actually do when it comes to engaging with arts and culture. What do they actually book and actually go to see? And then that's also layered up with lots and lots of information about demographics, geography, information from the census, information from various other sources that we can overlay into it. So then what you end up with is these 10 segments, which can become a common language for talking about audiences, either within your organisation or across the sector. And hopefully through the course of the day, it's not a day, it's only an hour, gosh, not the whole day, we will see how you could actually apply some of that segmentation to your marketing and to your audience engagement activity. Great. So that's the introductions done. Hopefully that was a useful little overview or refresher if you are returning to us and to what we do. We're going to pose a little problem here. This obviously is a hypothetical problem. This is something I've made up the other day, but it might be something that a number of you might be facing in some one form or another. It's certainly something I have faced in previous roles working in a venue. And it's this. In January, we have a production of West Side Story, which we thought would sell well, but it seems to have been overshadowed by Christmas, and we're now worried we'll miss our targets. What can we do? So that's my hypothetical problem that I am posing today, and that we will try and work through as we go through this afternoon. It might not be exactly your scenario. You might not have any shows at all in January, you lucky, lucky things. But hopefully there are some principles here that you could apply to shows throughout the year. Anytime there'll be a sort of a framework that you could use to address problems when, let's face it, you're struggling with sales at a really fundamental level, and there's no shame in that. It is difficult out there. So that's the hypothetical problem we're going to work with today. And I'm going to leave a promise, this is the only bit of marketing theory in this session, because I'm not qualified to talk about marketing theory in much detail, but it is potentially quite useful. This is a model by an American author called Philip Kotler. I think it's quite old now. I think it's a 30, 40-year-old model. But it's this idea that to be really efficient with our marketing and to be really effective with our marketing, we should always be segmenting, and we should always be looking at where we can best prioritize our resources. Because wouldn't it be wonderful if we had endless budget and endless resource and we could just chuck it out there and see what stuck? That's not reality for most of us. We're working with small budgets, tiny teams, limited capacity. So we need to get smart and we need to get targeted. So going back to what can we do? What can we do? I'd say the first thing is don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic. It will be fine. But using a model like this could help just kind of shape thinking and shape logical, calm, thoughtful thinking about the problem. So the first box on the left-hand side there, market segmentation, if we're going to use Audience Spectrum, which is our segmentation tool, so we will use it obviously as we talk through today, that bit's kind of already done for you. That is your basis for segmentation. You're going to use Audience Spectrum. Of course, other segmentation tools are available, but we're going to concentrate on Audience Spectrum today. So then, the sort of first question we want to be asking is, who could you target? You've got this show, you're struggling with it, you've got limited resource, so you want to do a little bit of thinking about who you could actually actively target. And this is when we can get into actually looking at some of those Audience Answers tools. We're going to have a look. I'm going to stop screen sharing this slide. We're going to go and have a look at them actually live in a sec. But the sorts of questions we'll look at here will be, who came last year? So if you had shows on last January, who did come last January? Because that's going to give you a sense of who are the people who are actually willing to go out during the terrible weather in January. Who are the people who've still got a bit of cash left over after Christmas and are willing to go out? And then we're going to think about the type of show. In this case, it's West Side Story. I'm a musical nerd. That's why I've chosen a musical. indulge me. But we need to have a think about who are the sorts of people who really like musicals. And we can look at some tools to help you do that. And then we've got that sense, but if we know which segments want to come to those shows, the sense check is to make sure that those people actually live where you are. There's no point identifying a segment if they're not actually in your catchment area and they're not actually appropriate for you to target. Waste of energy, waste of resources again. So we'll look at some mapping tools and some ways that you can look at who's in your area. So bear with me a second while I just stop sharing these slides and come back to share an internet browser. Here we go. So has that worked? Mira, can you give me a thumbs up?
Yep, this works.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So this might look familiar to some of you. You may have this set up already. You may have been using this for years. You may have this set up and never used it. All that is fine. All that is fine. This is the Audience Answers ticketing insights dashboard we're going to have a look at now. And this is fundamentally a connection between your ticketing system and our Audience Answers platform. And in between the flow of data between those two, a bit of processing happens that presents it in this dashboard format here. So this first question we want to answer here is, going back to that slide, which I won't do, I'll try and remember it. The first question we had on there was, who came to who came to shows in January last year? Going to give us an idea of who your potential might be. So you've got your ticketing dashboard set up here. If we go to the overview dashboard, this is the sort of entry-level basic dashboard that you will have set up if you've got one of these with us or if you want to get one set up. It's free for a lot of ticketing systems. Small setup costs might apply to other ticketing systems, but this is your kind of gateway, your entry in. It's going to give you the option to filter your date range that you're looking at by quarter here. You can hit it and set. It's not great if you are looking specifically at January, because obviously a quarter is 3 months, not just one. But if you're at that overview level, that's your option. We'll have a look in a sec at the upgrade to the overview, which allows you to get much more precise about which shows you're actually looking at. But let's assume for now we're looking at a quarter. I'm not going to reset the filters because you can do that yourself in your own data, but just to show you what's available here. You've obviously got your top level ticketing data here, but when I'll scan through that because that's all very self-explanatory. But what you can start to find here is you can start to find where those people are coming from, and also a sense of the audience spectrum profile. Actually, I should say I've messed that up. The audience spectrum profile is actually for a full 12 months. That's right, isn't it? Not for a quarter. Notable exception there. What we're actually looking at here is your whole year's worth of data and broken down by audience spectrum profile, which might make that more precise filtering that we'll look at in a second a bit more relevant actually. But if you are very limited on budget and you can't do that, this is going to give you at least a starting point of who your audience is. You're going to see the breakdown by audience spectrum segment here compared to your catchment area population. So you're going to start getting two things. Who are your dominant segments in your audience overall, and who are your dominant segments in your catchment area off of this chart here. If you want to get into that more granular detail that we mentioned before, you're going to need to do what we call a little upgrade to the essentials. This gives you a whole bunch of extra reports and extra functionality. And yes, we are going shamelessly hard sell here because it does have a cost to it. It is something that you might find useful. So if we go into, we've set up we've preloaded some reports. This is assuming you've now got the essential upgrade into your data. This is, again, we've got a filter here by date, but what we've now got is a little extra ability here to what we would call create a custom group of events. So to put that into very practical context, you could then say, what are all the shows we had on in January 2025? and create a group of those. I'm not going to walk through how to do it here because it's actually quite self-explanatory. Once you've got that set up, you can work through that. You then create a group just of those shows. Those are the only ones you're interested in. And you can then apply that as a sort of a zoom in on your dashboard. So we've got an example there that Samira kindly built for me a couple of weeks ago. Thank you. And now what I'm looking at is the audience spectrum profile, not of the whole year's worth, but just of those people that came to those shows in January. This is fake data, so don't put too much store by it. It's not a real organisation. It's fake data that we've built. But you can start seeing here, we've got some dominant segments coming out. We've got commuter lounge culture buffs, dormitory dependables, and home and heritage as the three top segments there, 1, 2, 3 across the screen there, are coming to shows in January. So these are people that have got cash to go out in January. They've got an interest in going out in January, and they've got form. They've done it before. So they're really, really good as a clue of a target group. There's something really, really good there to get into. So that's a first lot of clues starting to build up. Another thing you can do, this is a free tool now. So if you're thinking, yeah, no way we're ever going to be able to afford for that upgraded shiny dashboard you're showing us, Megan, that's all well and good, but it's not for us. Fine. You can use a tool here, which hopefully has that transferred over now to Genie. Yay! This went horribly wrong when I did an event last week, so it's just reassuring that it's working now. It's great. Thank you. This is Audience Spectrum Genie. This is an AI-powered tool that sits on ChatGPT, probably looks familiar to a lot of you, and you can ask it questions about Audience Spectrum. I've preloaded the query in there. We're a medium-sized theatre putting on a production of West Side Story. Please recommend the segments you could target. So I've got a little bit of an idea of my segments from looking at my previous year's data. But this is going to give you a bit more of a clue about who wants to come specifically to that kind of work, to West Side Story. And this is drawing on all sorts of data that we've preloaded into it about Audience Spectrum. And it's hopefully going to just give me a few clues and a few ideas from the knowledge that it has. Pretty good, I think, for a classic wildlife musical like West Side Story. You're appealing to audiences who value familiarity, quality, and a special night out. January matters. People are cost aware, also keen for uplifting, dependable entertainment. And it's now started to give me some clues. It's suggesting my highest return segments to look at might be dormitory dependables, and also why. Also suggesting streets. And it's also suggesting commuter lounge culture buffs. Give me 3 there that I can work with. Suggesting why. It's suggesting why the musical is right for them and why these people are good targets. It's also beginning to give me a few ideas about marketing tactics as well. So it's talking about framing here. So the best framing here for commuter lounge culture buff. One of the greatest musicals ever written, live this January. Please do adapt and, never take anything that ChatGPT tells you as gospel truth. Obviously, we know this, but this is hopefully just going to give you a little starting point, a little leg up. And then it's also beginning to suggest to me a few secondary opportunities as well. If you feel like you have the capacity or that is more appropriate for you and your organisation, there's a few other options there as well. Really helpfully, it's suggesting who not to prioritise, who not to go for. Metroculturals might see it as a bit mainstream, a bit middle of the road for them. They're a bit cool, or like to think they are. The other segments there tend to be much less culturally engaged generally, so they are harder to engage. But they may be a priority for you. You might have an organisational priority to work with some of these segments, in which case, fine, you need to be focusing them on as a priority as well. This is just suggesting the segments who have the highest propensity to book and give you their money, fundamentally. They might still not be right for your organisation. So always, always, always use your own knowledge, your own judgment when using tools like this, obviously. So that's all well and good. That's great. Lovely. What we want to know now is we've got a sense of who came, we've got a sense of who might like it, but we want to know, are those people actually in your catchment area? There's no point spending money and resource on segments who aren't actually there for you to engage. So again, this is where going back to your ticketing dashboard might be useful. I'll go back to the overview we looked at the beginning. But in here, you will get in this audience spectrum profile down here, you're getting a shaded line here, which is your catchment area population, balanced against your bookers, which is the solid bar across the top. So you can start to get a sense of where you've got large populations on your doorstep of particular segments, and most importantly, where you haven't got them. This one, for example, they haven't got the metrocultures locally at all. It's really not worth them putting a lot of time and resource into metrocultures because they're just not there to engage. But what they have got is lots and lots and lots and lots of heritage, lots and lots and lots and lots of dependables. They can start to get a sense of that. We do also have, if you don't have a dashboard like this set up yet, we do also have a mapping tool where you can fly around the UK and zoom in on different areas and look. And I'm going to see if one of my colleagues can post the link to that in the chat. We haven't got time to have a detailed look at it now. But it's another option if you don't have this set up for your own catchment area. You can do a sort of a bigger scale picture, a wider picture of things by looking at that map as well. It's just going to get you started on thinking about who's in your area. So, have a gulp of water. So we've now got a pretty good sense of who we're targeting in terms of a top 2 or 3 segments, maybe. I'll just flip back to my slides. I'm not going to full screen them, but hopefully this will be enough to be able to see my point. We've done the who could you target there. We're going to get to know them now. So this is when we want to think about who are these people really at a fundamental level. What motivates them? What's their values? What do they need from us? How can we best communicate with them? So again, we're going to have a look at some of the free resources that we've got kicking around as well about audience spectrum, because I mentioned at the beginning there are these 10 segments, but there's also 20 subsegments. There's a lot there. And I wouldn't for a second advise you trying to wrap your heads around all 20 subsegments. That's just far, far too many. And they're not all going to be relevant to you. So having narrowed it down to our 2 or 3, this is when you might find going and having a look at some of these, what we call the sort of detailed segment profiles. I'm just going to flip back out a second to see some of the profiles. This is our audience spectrum resource site. Again, we'll send links if you don't have it. We can direct you to these quite readily. There are detailed profiles here for every segment and subsegment. It's all there. It will tell you all sorts of things about who they are, where they are, what they like, what they engage with, what the barriers for them are. Wanted also just to point you to these motivation guides. These are downloadable PDFs that go into a bit more detail in terms of actually how you can engage somebody, actually what things do these people need, what speaks to them. So just to look at one here for Commuter and Culture Buffs, we talk about what their motivations are. We talk about their values. We talk about the sort of that you could use to engage in. So we're really getting into the useful, I think, now of practical kind of marketing stuff. We talk about the things in the program that might appeal to them. That's going to vary for everyone. Everybody's different. So some people are going to be motivated, obviously, by the title. Others are going to be motivated by particular creatives who are involved in that production. Others are going to be motivated by the fact that their friends are booking a group ticket and they just sort of get dragged along with them. You know, there's all sorts of different motivations for different people. And if we as marketers want to engage those people, we have to speak to them in that language that's going to work for them. So these are really, really useful little guides to work through and to have to hand. Some of the stuff in here, I mean, they're only a couple of years old, but it feels to me like some of the things are perhaps getting a little bit out of date. Perhaps when we talk about newspapers that people might read, it feels like newspapers are, well and truly on their way out now, unfortunately. But hopefully there is still stuff in there that is useful and helps you kind of think about that. I'm going to go back to our little AI friend for this as well, because Jeannie can help you think about some tactics as well. So again, I've carried on the chat that we had before with Jeannie about who should I be targeting. I said, okay, we know we've got lots of trips and treats and commuter land culture buffs in our catchment area. We want to focus on those. Can you suggest, Mr. Genie, some effective tactics to engage those segments? It's in its lovely ChatGPT way. It's been very affirming of me saying, great choice. Ignore that. We know what ChatGPT is like. But if I just work through what it's suggesting here for trips and treats, it'll give you a sense of what's available. So it's reminding me here that trips and treats as a segment are mainstream, family and friendship-led and value conscious. What we're going to want to do for them is to make it feel like an easy shared plan. They're busy people. They're often organising on behalf of other people. The tactics we want to look at here is we want to make it feel easy. We want to make all that practical stuff front and centre and very easy for them to get a handle on. The age guidance, the running time, the parking, all of that practical stuff is going to be super, super important to trips and treats. And we want to get this idea of it kind of being a social occasion across to them as well. So we want to give them some clear group signals. We want to lean into the fact that they like familiarity. They're not particularly adventurous in their taste. They want something that feels safe and comfortable. So you're going to want to really emphasise that familiarity factor of a musical like West Side Story. It's suggesting here dance poses, recognisable costumes, big dance numbers, well-known songs. And it's also starting to suggest some headlines as well. Build value without discounting too hard. This is an interesting one. This is giving some more subtle advice about how to price and how to communicate price and value to people. They still want quality, but they are price sensitive. So it's getting across that idea of this is a good night out, but it is, we're not going to overcharge you for it. It's reasonable. So my good tactics around group bundles. I could go on. I'm just going to scroll through quite a lot of this because it just gives you a sense of the kind of advice it's giving. You may have all of this already. You may have done this work on a segment, really understand what those segments need and not need to use something like Genie at all, but it is there to support you if you do need it. So we're getting our ideas there for, reshare my slides again. So if we now have a sense that we know who we've getting to know them, we've got some guidance on tactics. We've either looked at those motivation guides or we've used Genie to kind of help us along, or we've just had a conversation about it internally and we've discussed it with colleagues and people with experience about what's going on. If we're going to target our messaging, we need to refine it. We can't use the same generic copy for everybody. I'm definitely guilty of that, particularly working in a very busy, as I was at the time, receiving house venue. You'd get that copy through from the visiting company. You'd have 27 shows in a week on your plate to deal with, and you would just bang out that generic copy as widely as you could to everybody, thinking that's it, it's done, it's out there. I've used the same copy in every email. And then I'd wonder why I wasn't getting the engagement off the email. And of course, I'm not getting the engagement because I'm speaking to people in very generic terms and people don't like that. They like to feel that this is relevant to them and that they have been, kind of understood as people and as sort of valued customers at the end of the day. So there's really some work to do. And I think this is where it can get difficult because putting the time and thought into doing this is challenging. I won't deny that. It's something you're going to have to devote some time to, and it's something that you're going to have to refine and test and work on as you go. Work out what works. Use those tools like A/B testing in your emails to try and figure out what might work. And you're not going to be able to do exactly what I used to do, of just bashing it out quick all the time. The thought will pay off, but it does take time and energy to think about. So again, I'm going to shamelessly go back to Genie because I haven't got time to do the thinking right now here with you. I'll just show you what sort of suggestions that Genie came up with for me here. So gone back again and I've asked Genie to take a look at the generic marketing copy for the show and adapt it for our two priority segments. This is some copy that I pulled off of an American theatre's website, so don't worry, I'm not shaming any of you in the room here today about your copy. I won't be doing that. This is pulled off of a far, far away organisation who would never know that we've used their copy here. But it is very generic copy about the show. It's the sort of thing that I would have put out all the time to people with no refinement. Again, just going to go back to one example here. This is how we could adapt that copy for that Trips and Troops group that we mentioned before. We could talk more about the experience. We could talk more about the familiarity and that shared enjoyment aspect. And we could talk more about this being a safe choice for them. This is familiar ground and it's going to be a good night out. That's what these people like. So it's actually done here is it's rewritten that copy for that segment. You may not want to do this. Personally, this makes me feel quite uncomfortable as a marketer. I don't like the idea that I'm using AI generated copy in any form at all. It doesn't sit well with me, and I suspect you may feel the same. But what I can do with this is I can see what it's doing and I can see how I could then use that in my own work rather than taking this as gospel. I can take out the themes and the suggestions, the things that it's suggesting works. I can then start to incorporate that into my copywriting as well. And again, it's done it for the commuter and culture bus. You can also ask it about imagery as well. I haven't done that here, but it is something I've tried for other productions, and it will do things like it will say, lead with very moody, dramatic shots, or lead with scenes of enjoyment and fun. It just gives you a little pointer. Not encouraging an over-reliance here on AI at all. That's not what we're about. We're all about using these tools in a way that can help you. And you might not need this. You might be able to do this very instinctively, very naturally in your own copywriting. If so, brilliant. Go ahead. That's great. But I personally, every now and then, not ashamed to admit, find a bit of ChatGPT useful to help point me in the right direction. So you may well be the same. And that's what this is here for. So again, going back to our slide and our process here. So we're thinking about refining that message. We're thinking about refining that copy. We're thinking about adapting the tone and the style and the points depending on which segment you're talking to. You can also think about what are the sort of add-ons that they might respond to. And by that, we mean things like perhaps they might like a pre-theatre dining package, or perhaps they might like the opportunity to pre-book their interval drinks. And I think we don't want to assume that every segment wants the same things. They all want something slightly different. And those motivation guides, the PDF guides we mentioned earlier, will give you those clues about that. What are the things that are going to, as well as the show, be the hook for them and draw them into? So we're getting there. We're building up this process. We know who we want to target and we know how we're going to target them, and we've refined our message to something that's going to really resonate and land with them, we hope. That's all well and good, but if we don't know how to actually physically get them and find them and actually target them, that's the sort of final piece of the puzzle, isn't it? It's all very well having beautiful copy and imagery, but if you can't actually really get into those to find those people, what's the point, really? So we have a tool available to any organisation that's ticketed or has a ticketing system like you, where we can essentially tag every single booker on your system who we have a full and valid postcode for with their audience spectrum segment and subsegment. We can either do that as a one-off tagging, so you send us a bunch of data, we tag it, we send it back to you, and what most organisations choose to do, and I think we've actually got quite a few organisations here today who have this set up already and have this in their systems, is we can integrate that audience spectrum into your own ticketing system. So what that means is that on a regular basis for many systems, it's every 24 hours, we run a tagging of every single booker on your system, and we assign them to that audience spectrum segment that they fall into. And then you then see that on their customer record in your system. You don't have to come into Audience Answers to see that. It's there in your Spectrix, in your Ticketsolve, whatever system you use. And it's another attribute. It's like having the postcode or the name or the booking history. It's an attribute that is assigned to that customer in the system. It's there, it's as up to date as if we've got a live description. As I say, it's updated every 24 hours. It's quite unusual for people to move segments. So we're not so much updating people who've moved around. One day they're a metrocultural, next day they're a comedian and culture buff. Doesn't really happen. But what happens is it does tag new bookers as they come into your system on that regular basis. You've got them there. And that obviously means that you can build some mailing lists by segment. And you can build in your own system. We can't teach you how to do that because we don't know those systems as well as you do, but hopefully you can, or your ticketing provider can help you do that. You can build a mailing list for Trips and Treats. There you go. You've got your list for West Side Story, Trips and Treats. You've got your targeted copy for Trips and Treats. You've got your add-ons. You've got your imagery refined and perfect. And now you've got your list in your system ready to go that you can just send that email to people and then hopefully track it and see how people are responding to it. But you cannot get any more targeted than that, really. You've really, really thought that through, and it's a really refined and thoughtful campaign there that's really well targeted and really well, sort of refined in terms of tactics. So if you are interested in that tagging in your system, or you do have it in place, you might well have it in place already. Lots of organisations do. It's something that is very popular tool of ours. But if you don't have it, have a chat with us. We can set it up for you. It runs on an annual subscription basis. And it's sort of charged. It's the cost-wise depends on how many records you've got, basically. So if you're a tiny organisation with very few records, you'll obviously pay a lot less than a huge organisation. But we think it's a really, really powerful tool to be able to target people. You could also use it as well to do some really quite sophisticated reporting as well. It's not just a marketing tool. You can then run a lot of quite powerful reports in your own system that add in that extra layer that is audience spectrum and audience spectrum profiles. So you could start to do some really interesting work comparing, do people in this area respond better to this type of thing, layer in their audience spectrum segmentation, and this is why. You can really, really get quite sophisticated if you wanted to by having that extra field in there. So if that's something of interest, please do come and have a chat with us. We'll help get you set up. As I alluded to before, we can do it as a one-off exercise as well. So if you just had a one-off or a campaign and you wanted to just do a one-off tagging, we can do that, but you'll miss out on that kind of live update and adding in of new bookers all the time as well. If that's not something, or perhaps as an addition to that as well, in terms of targeting, you can obviously target by audience spectrum segment. In that way, people that you've already got on your list. So you're really going after people that you already have a relationship with, the people who are known to you and have been to you. But hopefully, what we're all also trying to do is reach people beyond our sort of current sphere of influence. So you could also use some of this intel that you've built up now through working through this process to really look at targeting out-of-home advertising or leaflet drops, or even things like Facebook advertising or geo-targeted digital advertising. So just wanted to touch on a couple of tools here that you might find useful to do that if you are looking to recruit new audiences or people from beyond your own mailing list. First would be that mapping tool that I mentioned before, and that hopefully a colleague has dropped into the chat as well earlier on, which is that top level view of the country and of the segments across the country. And that will start to give you a little bit of a sense, like for example, where I am here, I'm on the outskirts of Manchester, and I can get a sense here of which segments are dominant here versus in the city centre. So if I want to reach frontline families, for example, I am going to be looking at the people who live where I live here in the suburbs versus in the city centre. And I can get that just from that mapping tool at that kind of quite top level, looking at fairly large areas compared to other large areas, but that might be enough for you. If you want to get into a bit more detail with the geographic stuff and the geographic targeting, I think we've got time. Yes, we have got time. I just want to show a quick report that we offer. I really love these. My colleagues get a little bit tired of me rhapsodizing about how much I love these reports. This is a report that sits outside of Audience Answers, sits outside of that dashboard we looked at. It's outside of the Genie and all of that sort of stuff. This is a standalone report, which anyone can purchase from us as an off-the-shelf thing. They are called population profile reports, and they are designed to give you a really, really detailed view of who lives in your area. So this is obviously not just people who have booked a ticket with you in the past, but they are people who live in your area, everybody, everyone that's out there. So if you are looking to find new audiences in your area, this could be just an immensely useful tool to have in your back pocket as you go about your day-to-day marketing planning. Previous job, I had one of these. We used to recommission one every 3 to 5 years, and I was referencing it every week as I was planning print distribution campaigns or areas where I wanted to put roadside 48 sheets or railway stations where I wanted to put an ad rail up. You know, this was my go-to guide for it. So very briefly, to have a quick flick through, the last little thing I'm going to show you before we potentially take some questions. This is a report you can tell us the area you want to profile. So in the case of this example here, they are looking at a 15-minute drive time from what looks like central Cardiff, I think. I don't know Cardiff that well, so forgive me, anyone who's here from South Wales and is going to be like, what are you talking about? That's not central Cardiff at all. But that's what they've gone for as a target area. You can choose the area you want to do. It might be a distance in miles from your venue. It might be a local authority area. It could be a city boundary, it could be a region boundary. Pick it however you want. We can map it for you. We can then also compare it to a larger area as well, if that is useful. So the comparison, for me, I found the comparison most useful if I was trying to get a handle on what makes my area distinctive. So again, going back to where I am here in Manchester, if I map Manchester and compare it to the rest of the Northwest, it's going to tell me what's distinctive about Manchester versus the wider Northwest region, and I can adapt my activity accordingly. That's why we offer that comparison. And then what we do, we take that area and we give you everything we know about that area, about the people that live in that area. So we give you a really detailed audience spectrum breakdown here by segment and by subsegment, also compared to the wider area. We give you tons and tons and tons of census demographics. This is all data that you can get for yourself on the Office of National Statistics website. No pretenses about that. You can go and individually source all of this census data. What you won't get is for your very particular area that you're looking at, you'll get it in much more overview, and you won't get all of the arts engagement stuff as well. Not in effect. That's unique to ours. But it will give you age, ethnicity, household status, socioeconomic status, education levels, all of that stuff. It's just really useful for building up a picture of where you are. And if you think about it in marketing terms, it even goes into things like levels of education attainment. So you can start thinking, gosh, I need to adapt my copy for the reading age in this area or the general level of educational ability that we have here. Going to give you lots and lots of clues about how best to engage locally. We've got stuff in here about leisure activities. How many people in that area professed an interest in art galleries? It's there. You can find it. You know roughly what your market potential might be from doing this. Then these are the most, oh, this will let me do it. Here we go. This is a bafflingly big bit of spreadsheet, and we're not gonna dwell on it because no one needs that much spreadsheet action at 10 to 3 on a Tuesday afternoon. But to give you one example of how you could use this enormous quantity of data here in a very practical context, going back to our We want to target people for West Side Story in January. We've worked out that trips and treats are a really, really key segment for us locally. We've refined our copy. We've gone to our mailing list. We've done a refined, beautiful mailing. But we know there are lots and lots more trips and treats out there in our catchment area who we're not reaching. They're not engaging with us. How do we find them? You've got a report like this. It breaks it down by ward level. Tiny, tiny geographic areas here, but potentially very useful. And then, of course, with a little bit of Excel fun and game, you can, it's done that wrongly, but you get the idea. You can sort your columns. You can straight away see which area has got the highest number of people in that segment in that ward. So then if you're going back to planning your leaflet drop or your advertising in local media or your roadside 48 sheets, you then got it all there to know exactly where to target things for those very specific segments. This is something I've done lots and lots before. I used to give this sheet to my print distributors and say, go to these places with these leaflets. And it was really helpful to be able to really direct people in that way. So definitely recommend getting hold of one of these if you can. You won't need them that often. Maybe one every 3 to 5 years perhaps might be enough for you, but you've got it there as a resource to use as you need it. So that's just about the end of everything I have, I think. I hope that has given a bit of an overview of some very practical tools that you can take on a little bit of a journey. You're not going to use them all. You're not going to find them all relevant, but there might be something there that you can, get into, have a think about. What I would say is try and always track everything as you're doing it. Track your success. Use your dashboard. Go back into your audience answers dashboard and build those reports, build those filters in to look at how things actually did. Did your profile change from this January to the next January, for example? You could do that. I am going to stop talking for a sec and just ask Samira and Lucy because we've got 5 minutes, if there's anything that's come out in questions that we could do with addressing here as a group, and we'll try and do that with what time we've got left.
We don't have any questions. We've had it's been tumbleweedy in the chat, so no questions. But we can also, if people would like to speak to us now, we can stop the recording and just have a chat. That would be absolutely fine as well. So should we do that and see? And if not, don't feel like you all have to talk. You don't have to at all, but we'll stop it and then give you a chance to chat if you wish to. So I will do that now.